The late October air in my mother's kitchen was heavy with the perfume, deep and dark like savanna dirt after a rainstorm. Freshly prepared coffee, almost aggressively potent today, and his sandalwood perfume, familiar but disturbing. Over many years of his visits, I had subconsciously classified that aroma, a reassuring family memory. It jarred my senses this morning, disrupting my well-ordered life. I stood at the granite counter with my half-empty coffee mug cooling quickly. When my palms got sweaty, the porcelain felt cool and smooth. With a desperate effort, I pretended his presence beside the sunroom's arched entryway wasn't causing a strange shock. Julian was dropping in on my mother like he had done 100 times, almost like family. My mom, with her exquisite, infuriating timing, had chosen this morning to make an impromptu run to the gourmet market for a forgotten, important ingredient for that evening's dinner party. I was alone in an unforeseen, unsettling solitude. It shouldn't have mattered. It was unprecedented. Why now? What invisible change in the environment made his familiar presence so heavy? I felt a subtle but significant change in the air in my sunny, happy kitchen. I noticed how he leaned against the doorframe with nonchalant assurance that bordered on arrogance. One ankle crossed over the other, he observed me with unsettling, analytical stillness. Or maybe it was the little smirk at the corner of my lips, as if I were privy to some cosmic, sardonic joke I hadn't grasped, a jest at my own cost. My presence has always been confident and predictable in our family tapestry. I felt it heavy on me today, with an unspoken, simmering charge that made the air around us crackle with a peculiar force. I wondered what dark currents were churning beneath that glossy, urbane veneer. Why was it that I only now noticed and felt their pull after all these years? As he spoke, I could feel the tension in the air. His voice was a deep, resonant hum, like a faraway cello, but there was an undercurrent of humor that sounded almost predatory, frightening me. I attempted a tentative smile that felt out of place. I tucked a non-existent auburn strand behind my ear to appear nonchalant and worried. It was just a long morning, but I knew it was a lie. David kissed my forehead before leaving for his law firm's demanding demands, starting the morning in its customary, familiar way. The steady, predictable, and somewhat dull regularity of our existence together was reflected in his faded leather briefcase. My world felt familiar, stable, and well-organized. A strange, smothering discomfort overcame me. A pleasant, ordinary talk with a family friend set off my heart to racing, banging my ribs for no apparent reason. But then he moved, not aggressively, not even fully into the room, not crossing any visible, defining line, but shifting his weight, a gradual progress that seemed to constrict the distance between us, making the huge kitchen feel instantly close, almost claustrophobic. He seemed to radiate warmth across the frigid morning air, making my arm hairs stand on end. Long, artistic fingers, like sculptors or musicians, slowly, deliberately, almost sensually caressed the rim of my coffee cup on the counter beside me. I was distracted by the exquisite, hand-painted ceramic tile pattern under my feet. My instinctively tighter hold on the mug hurt my knuckles. I murmured, "Are you sure, Evelyn?" My voice was now a velvet whisper that seemed to bypass my ears and vibrate straight in my nerves, playing at my carefully crafted serenity. Swallowed, the sound resonating in the kitchen's abrupt, heated calm. Another blatant and sad falsehood. I was tense, the terrifying and irrefutable truth swelling in my throat. It hurt because his persistent, probing gaze prickled and constricted my skin, not because I was mourning or worried about minor matters. My unfaithful body reacted with an involuntary jolt of awareness, a forbidden flicker of curiosity, before my sane, married, sensible mind could erect its well-worn defenses. I knew it was completely incorrect. As I dropped my cup in the basin, probably too fast and jerkily, I could feel a half-formed explanation for leaving already on my lips. I felt his silent, disturbing pursuit behind me. I whirled back, shocked by his proximity, and nearly hit his chest's solid wall. I was overwhelmed by a dark, Julian sandalwood aroma. My hand went out in a lightning-fast reflex, my fingers splayed wide and powerful to stabilize myself by the waist. I believed the contact would be quick and unintentional, but it lasted longer than planned. It felt like an overlong heartbeat. Also, an endless period. My eyes fell on theirs, and the commonplace bright morning fractured into countless sparkling, dangerous shards in that breathless moment. A raw, illicit current rushed through me, something I hadn't felt in years or possibly ever. My heart raced with a forbidden excitement, enticing but deadly. His thumb barely touched my clothing, just above my hip. It was a little caress that made me shudder. He took his hand away, and it fell to his side like that little instant had burned him. "Careful," he mumbled, his voice now harsh and bare of its former silky laughter, hinting at something deeper and less controlled. My heart raced, a furious pounding in my ears. I laughed shakily and unconvincingly, almost hysterically. I fell back, creating a gap that felt more claustrophobic and charged than the terrible closeness. I knew I should leave, I did. I stumbled and stammered as I searched for my purse strap on the granite countertop. He watched me with those unfathomable eyes as I ran through the side door. I briefly returned to rationality amid the clear October air. Even as I left, his voice lingered, smooth, confident, and resonant, with an unsettling surety. "Evelyn, I know we'll meet again." I didn't notice the question. As I ran down the oyster shell road, the shells crunching under my heels echoed unnaturally in the calm morning. I realized something terrible and uncomfortable then. My dangerous, secret part had just woken up, seeking for something I desperately needed and felt ashamed of. Driving back to my peaceful, nicely adorned house in Savannah's historic center seemed like traversing a fog-filled maze. My hands, sticky with nervous sweat, gripped the steering wheel of my practical sedan so hard that my knuckles became white and hurt. I sat there listening to my favorite classical station and a relaxing Bach sonata. Its complex beauty generally soothed me. Today, its rich harmonies faded into a meaningless muddle. My memory replayed every gaze, inflection, and electrifying touch from that encounter in Mom's kitchen. I kept telling myself it was just a casual talk, an accidental handshake, or misjudged proximity. Deep down, it felt like everything. It seemed like the first low, ominous tremor before a major earthquake. I attempted to explain it, rationalize it, and reject it as a temporary aberration caused by my hazy, unconscious restlessness. Perhaps it was a brief hormonal hiccup that didn't matter in my carefully planned life with David. My body, that fickle, alert vessel, knew more than I did. His brief but significant touch on my waist left me feeling the phantom heat. Our eyes locked with stunning intensity, and my throat constricted uncomfortably. These were real, not simply ramblings. These betrayals were ingrained in my cells, unerasable by my consciousness. I saw David's silver Volvo missing as I entered our azalea-lined driveway. I felt a shameful, tremendous relief that nearly knocked me over. A frenzied, breathless instant was needed to piece together my damaged self and aggressively reject any creeping, deadly nonsense that had seeped into my mind and senses. The house, typically my refuge and a place of quiet and order, felt odd and hostile today. I took off my practical, low-heeled heels, the sound unsettling the unexpected calm. My fingertips traced the cool, smooth marble of the entryway table and the rich, nubby silk of the living room draperies as I walked like a ghost through the familiar, beloved rooms. I was urgently attempting to ground my carefully crafted life in reality. I stood in the kitchen admiring the shiny copper pans and alphabetized spice jars. It was clean as I left it that morning. I surveyed the room, admiring David's grandmother's antique mahogany dining table. Framed art photos showed David's calm passion on the walls. I felt tranquil since everything was in its place, well considered. Everything felt right. Yet, as I stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by my marriage's comfortable symbols, I felt terrifyingly disconnected, like an actress who has suddenly, tragically lost all her lines and cues during a vital performance. I moved toward the master bedroom as if guided by an unseen power. My fitted linen blazer fell carelessly onto the plush velvet chaise lounge by the window as I shrugged. One of David's auction finds, an ornate, hefty, gilt-edged antique mirror across the room caught my reflection, and I looked for a long, unsettling, almost uncomfortable minute. Who was this woman staring at me, her cheeks flushed not simply from the autumn chill and her wide, troubled eyes flashing a wild, foreign, even desperate light? I never pictured myself as a woman with such unlawful, harmful, soul-corrupting thoughts, even in my wildest dreams. Infidelity, betrayal, and the messy, terrible breakdown of my marriage were previously narrative devices in dramatic films, scandalous novels, and whispered, judgmental gossip about others, less fortunate and less careful than I believed I was. I'm terrified by this future chapter, which contrasts with Evelyn Reed's carefully planned and steady life. After 15 years of shared history, mutual respect, and gentle tenderness, my marriage to David is stable and reliable. David was a kind, loving husband and a wonderful man. Our lives together were filled with love, partnership, steadfast dedication, and predictability. Was passion real? I tried desperately to remember the last time I felt truly, deeply, unequivocally desired when I wondered, with a sudden, sharp pang of regret, when that vital, incandescent spark had faded so quietly, so imperceptibly, that I hadn't even noticed its departure, hadn't mourned its loss until this very moment. I tried to remember the last time I was kissed like a precious object to be consumed rather than adored with a soft, almost perfunctory tenderness. I was horribly ensnared in our night's peaceful, predictable, almost antiseptic rhythm. The intense, seeking, desperate desire we had enjoyed in our youth had progressively been replaced by mechanical compassion. Unexpectedly, a nasty notion entered into my mind. I wonder how Julian's artful, knowing hands would feel on my spine's sensitive curve. Suppose his lips, with that maddening, knowing smirk, found mine again with a purpose, a search? The sight was so intense that I gasped and trembled. I quickly looked away from the mirror, as if that would erase the creeping notion and unpleasant reflection. The distant, familiar sound of the front door opening and David's heavy, slow hall footfall brought me back to hazardous reality. I inhaled deeply and smoothed the front of my rumpled silk top with quivering palms. Before leaving the bedroom to greet my spouse, I attempted to look calm. I was home with David. My usually impeccable tie was loosened, and my handsome, familiar face was marked with the quiet exhaustion of a long day at the office. He said, "Hey, I noticed you're back early," with a soft, caring, and heartbreakingly oblivious smile. I smiled, but my face felt tight and unyielding. "Just escaped for a moment." He leant in and kissed my cheek, a daily ritual. I barely noticed his dry, brief lips. "How was my day, Ev?" he asked as he put his keys on the polished antique hall table, and the familiar, comfortable clink filled the quiet room. I paused too long, the lie already effortless and rehearsed on my lips. Uneventful, I thought, the word staying on my tongue like betrayal, like ash. Another little but significant falsehood joined the rising, toppling mound. The customary half-hearted recounting of our days broke the stillness at dinner, which felt somber. I sat through a tedious client conference that lasted hours about a merger that was more challenging than expected. I nodded and murmured sympathetically in the proper places, appearing to be interested in a way I couldn't manage. In Mom's bright kitchen, a touch tormented me and wouldn't go away. I wondered what a voice had promised as it echoed. More. There was much more. After pretending to watch TV, I stood in front of the elaborate bathroom mirror again that night. I was wearing an outdated, shapeless, and ugly t-shirt and brushed my hair aimlessly. My phone's cool blue light threw flickering, unsettling shadows on the high bedroom ceiling while I surfed through news feeds or answered late-night business emails in bed. The cool, crisp, lavender-scented sheets next to him were my refuge after turning off the bright bathroom light. I felt him shift, a familiar nightly movement, unconscious contact. His soft, reassuring fingers rested on my waist. I had felt this touch many times, comforting, reassuring, grounding, but tonight it felt completely empty, igniting nothing within me. I felt no warmth, no flicker of desire, and no hint of affection. I lay there, tense and unmoving, silently urging my stubborn body to react, to recall the well-trodden paths of longing and affection. In place of warmth and connection, I felt nothingness, as if there was nothing around me. I settled into a steady, regular, comfortable sleep as my breathing deepened. I stared at the ceiling's intricate, shadowy plasterwork, feeling guilt, longing, shame, and an intense, rising interest. I believed this life with this kind, good man would be enough. I realized I should have been really, humbly grateful for his stability, security, and unconditional love. Instead, I recalled how a different man's short, almost accidental contact had inexplicably, unexpectedly sparked my flesh, my soul. The terrible, overwhelming, irrefutable understanding of how urgently, foolishly I wanted to feel it again. Sleep seemed like an unattainable beach, a cruel fantasy. I tossed and turned in my comfortable bed, feeling like a tortured prisoner. Adjusting the down pillow, pulling the thick silk duvet to my chin, and then kicking it off again in a smothering fever of uneasiness. David's quiet breathing used to soothe my spirit like a lullaby. It now exacerbates my anxiety and guilt. Each time I closed my eyes to escape, the sight repeated in terrible, startling clarity. The delicious, hazardous fragrance of coffee and sandalwood enveloped me in Mom's sunlit kitchen. Julian's dark eyes stared at me with unsettling intensity. I expected a casual, familiar warmth from an old family friend, but it was much stronger, hinting at shared secrets and unsaid, thrilling dangers. I continuously chastised myself for catastrophizing a harmless, meaningless, transitory moment. My stubborn, dumb, treacherous heart saw the truth. I felt that spark, that illicit connection, and even more terrifyingly, I wanted to feel it again with a passionate, reckless, all-consuming yearning. At 6:30 a.m., the alarm clock buzzed loudly and unpleasantly. Breaking the pristine pre-dawn stillness rudely interrupted my troubled, sleepless night. I forced my exhausted body out of bed and went through my morning routine like an automaton, numb and joyless. Showering, I let the warm water wash over me. I then apply makeup softly and intentionally. In front of my closet, I chose a muted gray cashmere sweater and sleek charcoal trousers. It feels like a planned defense against the day and possibly myself. To the outsider, everything seemed normal, but within, I felt broken and irreparably transformed. As I ate breakfast, I observed David, with his trusting heart, look through his phone and casually mention the morning news. I feigned to drink Earl Grey tea while planned my busy gallery day. I smiled and laughed when needed, expertly portraying the cheerful, well-adjusted wife, but beneath that Oscar-worthy front, my heart skittered like a trapped, frightened bird. I couldn't explain this strange feeling that seemed to permeate my bones. No definite, clear-cut, legally permissible event had occurred. However, I couldn't escape the impression that a hazardous, potent seed had taken root in me. A spider's thread-thin hairline fracture had emerged in what I believed was my sturdy, unshakable foundation. I had a dangerous, perverted curiosity about whether it would widen and whether the carefully built, gorgeous building would collapse into dust. After leaving the house, I was met by a cool Savannah morning. I felt the first true winter promise in the air. I felt like my nerves were inverted violin strings. I checked my phone twice before getting in the car. Hope and dread surged through me, an unpleasant surge for a message that wasn't there. Who would send it and what would it say? I wanted to convey what? I enjoy managing a small, prestigious, upmarket art gallery in the historic neighborhood as a calm escape from daily life. However, the vivid, expressive canvases and powerful, emotive sculptures were drab and pointless today. My thoughts kept returning to Julian, the unspoken, and the forbidden, shattering my attention. I went out for a solo, much-needed late lunch at midday. My gut clenched violently as the crisp, clear autumn air did little to clear the smothering fog in my thoughts. He leant with an infuriating, almost insolent casualness against his sleek, dark, expensive sedan, a Jaguar, I noted with a detached part of my brain, parked directly across the narrow cobblestone street from the gallery entrance, as if my presence were the most natural, preordained, and inevitable thing in the world. He seemed to know my schedule, habits, escape routes, and thoughts. I should have hated its audacity. Instead, I felt a forbidden exhilaration. I could have ignored him. I should have ignored him, turned around, and left, finding comfort in the nearest bustling cafe where I might blend in. My feet, as if they had a mind of their own, drove me forward across the uneven, ancient stones toward him and the danger he so clearly, seductively represented. "Are you following me, Julian?" I asked, trying to exude a humorous indifference that seemed unattainable. My voice quiver, showing my inner anguish, to my shame. His lazy, knowing, aggravating smirk across his gorgeous, angular lips caught my attention. That damning, enticing grin drove me crazy. Evelyn, it was simply a coincidence. Perhaps I saw his dark eyes glittering with a dangerous, challenging light that appeared to pierce me. I think it's fate. I tried to do a sophisticated, contemptuous eye roll. My heart, that unrelenting, dumb traitor, wouldn't cooperate. It started in a frenetic, stifling double time, pulsing my body with an unpleasant, primordial awareness that overcame all rational thought and moral concerns. "I found myself there," he said, his voice silky, rich, and dark like his car's Italian leather upholstery. "I was passing by. Coffee was my choice. Want to join me?" I knew it was a lie, a blatant, disrespectful falsehood. They knew, as did I. I felt miles from my downtown legal practice and business. Both of us ignored the deception. My breath was unsteady and restricted. My breath was barely noticeable as I casually glanced at the Bean Brew, a charming independent coffee shop a few doors down the street. I discovered it public. I entered a busy setting. I believed it was safe hypothetically. I was in neutral area where nothing bad could happen or be irreversible. But hadn't we already made a permanent connection? What was I doing here? Was I stretching my limitations, trying my determination, or recklessly inviting upheaval, flirting with ruin? I sat across from her at a little, wobbly wrought iron table near the enormous front window. The rich, intense smell of freshly roasted coffee beans and warm cinnamon pastries created a thick, almost cloying environment that was soothing. I persisted in persuading myself it was coffee. A long-lost friend and I had a useless talk. We just happened to meet and exchanged pleasantries without much depth. Tension was alive between us. It hummed beneath our polite, stilted sentences like an electric force. I could feel it making its invisible, lethal way through every fleeting, laden gaze and every casual, seemingly unimportant shift of his long fingers across the aged, scarred wooden tabletop. I noticed Evelyn was quiet today. He stared at me for a long, tense time, making me feel uneasy and exposed. Missed nothing. Defiance rushed through me as I looked at him. Now I wouldn't look away. I tried to appear calm, even though I felt anything but that, losing myself in thinking. Talking about what? My smooth, dangerously sweet voice encouraged confidence and submission. My answer is truthful. We. I'm on the edge of my marriage's disintegration, terrible but exhilarating. Too deadly, raw, and horrifically exposing to describe. I gave him the safe, bland, sanitized version. I work. I struggle with familiar worries. He stared at me for what seemed like an age, intensely. It was a neatly made mask that concealed his expression. How is life, with all its ordinary beauty, treating you, Evelyn? The seemingly innocent inquiry hit me like a punch. I felt my life was good by society's standards. I always liked it. I had everything a smart, intellectual woman should want: a loving, successful, dedicated husband, financial stability, a beautiful, historic home, and a meaningful work. Everything I intended and worked hard for was realized. What causes this gnawing, unexplainable emptiness? Why did I feel this wild, overwhelming, horrifying drive towards something, someone who symbolized the possibility, almost inevitable annihilation of it all? I managed another weak smile. Absolutely, perfect, I think. I couldn't improve. This falsehood tasted like ash, poison on my tongue. The creaky chair creaked as I leaned back, my fingers hypnotically tracing the delicate rim of my coffee cup. He said, "You know, Evelyn," sending thrills down my spine. I sometimes see smart individuals convince themselves they're happy and their lives are ideal. It appears simpler and less disruptive than the terrible alternative. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening painfully and dry. "Julian, what's your alternative?" I leaned in closer, my heart beating, expecting the expected response. His deep, black eyes never left mine. Something crucial, something I didn't know I needed, might be missing. A cold, unwelcome chill ran down my spine, but I tried my hardest to keep my expression calm. I took a slow, deliberate sip of the lukewarm bitter coffee. This little act shielded me and gave me time to organize my defenses. He was right, I couldn't argue. God, he was right. However, saying that terrible acknowledgement would make that dangerous, alluring concept irrevocably real, and I wasn't ready for that. Or was I? What did it mean to be ready for my life's deconstruction when I felt like I was drowning in a furious, tempting current? The stillness was thick and stifling, nearly too much to take, packed with all the risky realities we fought so hard, yet helplessly, to avoid. After appearing quickly and casually on the street outside my gallery, I observed him stand there and put a few crumpled bills down the table with a careless disregard. I watched him say goodbye, his voice smooth and infuriatingly serene, unaffected by the emotional earthquake he had just caused inside me. I watched him turn and leave the busy cafe, slipping into the anonymous lunchtime crowd. I clutched my coffee cup so firmly that I was surprised it didn't break into 1,000 jagged shards as he left, knowing deep in my bones that this wasn't the end. Not even close. I perceived this as an interval before a potentially more deadly act. My story was unfamiliar to me, and I didn't know how to control, manage, or end it. What terrified me most? I wasn't sure I wanted it. I would continue the plot by exploring the next scenes. I struggled with Evelyn's mental anguish while interacting with David and Julian. Each moment mattered, leading me to my desired ending. I tried to embellish every description, conversation, and internal monologue while staying within the 4,500-word limit. To capture her solo wanderings and Julian's loft visit, I dug deeper. I sensed her shame and yearning grow, culminating to her self-realization. I carefully expanded on these components to meet the word count without duplication and focus on depth and richness in her journey.